First off, grazie ragazzi, forza Ferrari, Italia, 1-2. Ferrari are back. What do you want? All right, guys, I have to make this a little bit quicker than normal because I just have some more responsibilities this week that I have to do, and so I don't have as much time to record, especially on a Sunday night. It has to do with the dog. All right, the dog ruins a lot of things YouTube-wise. I can't even stream because of the dog. It's a price I'm willing to pay. Shout out to all the Patreon supporters for always supporting the channel. You guys are the absolute best. Now, let me get comfortable here, and we got to talk about Atlanta. And I'm happy I get to talk about it on YouTube and not have to put an opinion on Twitter. Because Twitter has been... I've seen the worst of Twitter today. I thought it was going to happen because I thought this race would be very divisive. But it just, yeah. It's not just NASCAR, though. Like, you know how you guys know how much I love Arsenal. I see it with Arsenal. If we lose a game, one game, you know, everyone goes crazy. It's always, like I said, Twitter is just one extreme or the other. There's never anything in between. But the sad thing is, like, there's so much good on Twitter. Like, I use Twitter for all my, you know, news, information, journalists that I trust, comedy as well. So it's not like you could get rid of Twitter, because there's so much good in it, but then there's no way to filter out the bad. You can't mute thousands of different accounts. You can't, you know, you can mute one at a time, but you can't block out or filter out just the toxicity of it. But yeah, let's not talk about Twitter too much. I already ranted on it for a minute. Let's talk about Atlanta. If you guys think, you know, what do I think about it? I'm coming at this from a different perspective. This is essentially what the low horsepower package should have always been at mile and a halves, but when NASCAR put the 550 horsepower package at, let's say, a track like Las Vegas or Chicagoland or Kansas, where the asphalt is obviously not made for pack racing, then the field spreads out with low horsepower and it feels kind of stupid. But Atlanta repaves the track, right? And they reconfigure it and they turn it into like this mini Superspeedway, and then you take essentially the Daytona plate package that, you know, NASCAR uses, and you put it onto Atlanta. It becomes like Atlanta Superspeedway, and I don't have a problem with it. I thought the racing was fine. My main problem with it, it's way too long. That the race ended, I think, 7:22. Green flag was at 3:17. It's a 4-hour race. There wasn't any red flags to make it a 4-hour race. That's ridiculous. It's way too long. Like I've been saying, F1 flies by in like 90 minutes, feels good. You get a ton of action in a nice condensed amount of time. Yeah, to be honest, I don't think NASCAR races should even go above 350 miles. I think 400 miles is too long. I've always been an advocate for shorter races. I've usually always been in the minority for that. Most people like their longer races. I get it. But this is just too long. For this style of racing, it's way too long. If we're talking about a short track or, you know, the normal mile and a half stuff, I can agree 400-mile races are fine. Still probably a little bit too long for me, but it's okay. But when you're talking about a plate race where you're always going to be in a pack, only the Daytona 500 should ever be 500 miles. You know, and that's for tradition purposes. Every other race should not be 500 miles. That's just my opinion on it. I know it's probably never going to change. We might get it down to 400 for all races, and I think you've seen the majority of NASCAR races now go to 400 miles, but there are still a few out there where they just take way too long. This one, you get the race doesn't feel as good to you because it just takes so long. It's kind of like meaningless racing for like the first few hours because, you know, you kind of just, I don't know how to explain it. But other than that, guys, you got to think about it from the perspective of, let me say, if you didn't like this race, if Atlanta stayed the way it was just going to become Chicagoland. You know how Chicagoland doesn't have a race date? So you have to think to yourself, do you want a race date or not? And I think Atlanta now has 2 race dates. Aren't we going to Atlanta now twice because of this new configuration? I'm not sure about that. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But essentially, the attendance today looked pretty solid for Atlanta standards. Obviously, there were still empty seats, but I'm talking for Atlanta standards. The last few years, that place hasn't even been 50% full. So when you think of it from that perspective, they needed something to get butts and seats. And you bring a super speedway package that brings wrecks and like a plate race, and it puts people in seats. The only thing is, you don't want all mile and a halves being like this, right? So this is unique. it's the only plate race that's less than 2.5 miles. You have Daytona, you have Talladega, and then you have the baby version, which is Atlanta. As long as it stays like that, and there's no other track like Atlanta, then that's good. The problem is, what if Texas comes out and says, well, to be fair, Texas is a monstrosity anyways, but, you know, what if Texas comes out and says, we want to become a 1.5 mile Superspeedway? Then what if Las Vegas comes and says, we want to become a 1.5 mile Superspeedway? And then what if an auto club says, we want to become a 2.5 mile Superspeedway? We'll put banking in the corners and make it another Talladega. That's where the problem comes. You don't want this all the time. And I think NASCAR has been doing a fairly decent job at adding variety into it, but it's when NASCAR then talks to the team or to the tracks, and the tracks probably come to NASCAR and they're like, hey, we want to make a super speedway race, and the NASCAR has to be like, whoa, relax, okay? Like, we don't want too many of this. This is fine as long as it stays on its own, and it, you know, yeah, as long as it stays on its own. I don't have a problem with it. I think it's different. I think it's unique. I think it's cool. I don't have a problem with it. Would I prefer, like, my opinion on this was, I would prefer a Atlanta going back to the Homestead style reconfiguration, but then I kind of, you know, I essentially shoot my own argument in the foot, because I just said have Atlanta be its own thing, and then in another way I'm saying, well, if Atlanta goes back to its old configuration, it becomes a little bit like Homestead, then there's a Homestead and there's an Atlanta. There's two of the same track. But the main thing about that concept art, which I think I could put on the screen now, was that around Atlanta, it would be like, I don't know how much money this would have taken, but, you know, it was obviously talked about within the state and the city, is that around the track, there'd be so much to do, you know, there'd be a lot of different things to do. And this is just like, you know, just venturing off into another topic. I think if a track wants to reconfigure itself, think about more what's going on outside the track than actually inside the track. You'll have a plan, obviously, for inside the track, but if you give fans things to do outside the track. You know, one of the cool things about Daytona is Daytona has so much to do outside of the track. You have a ton of different restaurants, a mall, you have the beach right there. On the beach, you could have, like, you know, a few rides, like a Ferris wheel and like some, you know, amusement park stuff. That, you know, that kind of stuff is cool. And no other track has that. If you go to Homestead and you go outside of Homestead, there's nothing. It's just grass. To get to the track, you have to, like, drive 3 miles into the nothing, and there's nothing around it. You want to go get food outside of Homestead Miami Speedway, you gotta go drive like 10 minutes to the to the nearest street. So, you know, I think one thing Atlanta could have done is, like, okay, you make this super speedway package, but then add in some things for the fans, because you want fans to get, you know, butts and seats. Add some things around outside the track. William Byron won the race. He did a good job. Again, it was like a plate race. You know, Bubba Wallace was trying to make a move, wasn't able to do it, and then everyone kind of had their own agenda. So whoever was in third didn't want to help second because they wanted to get to second to try to get help to get into first, but no one wanted to help second. So William Byron just stood up in the front, and he was like, "Oh, this is nice. I don't have to do anything. I just gotta keep an eye on my mirror and just drag the brake, and I'm good." So he won the race. He's the third Hendrick car to win in the first 5 races. And that is a good result for him. The top 10 is right here, as you guys can see. And I can't talk about, like, what was going on in the middle of the race, because there was always different people up front. There was always different things going on. There was a lot of wrecks, a lot of single car spins in the lead from Chevys. Apparently their camber was too high in their setups. There were some hard hits. There was a good amount of wrecks, and it just was a plate race. That's the best way I can explain it. In a plate race, you have wrecks, you have close racing, you have blocking, you have different lines, and that's what Atlanta was. I'm fine with it. Like I said, I think you guys, you know, will probably be fine with it too. Again, the biggest perspective is for Atlanta. They needed this. They needed something to bring the attendance and the money in. It's just that simple. So whether if you wanted Atlanta to not be repaved and keep it as it was, well, that wasn't working. Maybe you like the racing, but the surface was very old and people weren't showing up. If you wanted Atlanta to go to a Homestead configuration, then yes, it would probably be a really cool track, but it would take a few years for it to become like Homestead, because you'd need the asphalt to wear out. And does Atlanta really have a few years to work with? Remember, when you repave a track, it takes some years to get that track to how you want it to race. If you want it to race like a Homestead or Chicagoland or Las Vegas, or, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Again, Atlanta, they needed something. They already lost their race day, and they were kind of on the brink. They couldn't get attendance, And so they did this, and now you can get what you want right away. Bang, from the start. You don't gotta wait for the asphalt to wear out. And I think it was a solid move. I don't have a problem with it, and I think the race, again, other than it being too long, it was like another plate race. And you have Daytona. The last plate race was Daytona, and we go to Talladega, I think in April. You know, I'm okay with that. I just don't want plate racing. Like, I don't want 10 of them in a year. You know what I mean? That's essentially what the 550 horsepower package was trying to do, and is really annoying. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I have to go. I apologize for not being able to get into the race as detailed as I wanted to. I don't have the time. We got some responsibilities I got to take care of. So I apologize about that. I will be back tomorrow. Comment down below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you're new. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram if you're not already. I probably won't be tweeting a lot. If I tweet, I'm going to be tweeting about Arsenal. All right? I'll be very nervous until May, okay? So, you know, we'll hopefully we get into the top 4. Had a good result over the weekend. I'll see you guys later. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Enjoy the rest of your week. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care of yourselves. Peace out.